Welcome to Data Protection Gumbo, episode 20, and I am Demetrius Malbro, your Chief Data Protection Chef. And Data Protection Gumbo is set up with the aim to expand the awareness of the IT industry by being a voice for protecting all types of digital information, whether big or small. And in the 6 degrees that separate the circles of storage, data protection, cloud, and backup and recovery, it all seems to return full circle to the kitchen as a diverse pot of gumbo. And today on Data Protection Gumbo, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Steve Kenniston, Vice President of Product Marketing for Infinidat. And as the VP of Product Marketing, his responsibilities include helping to raise the awareness of the technology Infinidat is delivering to the market with focus on how it helps corporations drive competitive advantage. Welcome to the Gumbo, Steve.
Thank you very much, Demetrius. It is a pleasure and honor to be here. I listen to your show frequently. Thank you for having me.
And we appreciate your support. All right, Steve, let's jump into the questions here. So, what do you mean by density when it comes to the InfiniBox? And how does that allow you to replace some of your competitors' devices?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think one of the things that we talk about or we think about when it comes to the InfiniBox system is the fact that we've really taken on a lot of innovation from the multitude of years of experience from the entire development staff that we have at Infinidat. So it's not like we leveraged traditional technologies, traditional RAID technologies and that sort of thing to build what we would consider an evolutionary box. We've actually gone through and done things like rewritten RAID-like code to be able to be smarter about how it leverages the drives and the capacities in such a way that we can actually take advantage of more of the capacity of more of the drives working together in order to cut down on the amount of space that is used for traditional RAID-type technologies. So when you do that, when you actually back up and you rewrite a lot of the code, you can do some interesting things. So the InfiniBox is over a petabyte, over 2 petabytes of capacity in a single floor tile, and we've been able to accomplish that with our RAID-like capabilities that only actually use about 20%. Or 2% of every drive to be able to go through and maintain 7 nines of availability, high availability, incredibly fast rebuild times. So 15 minutes for even a 2-drive failure. But overall, take advantage of more capacity on all of the drives.
Okay, so would you consider the InfiniBox a hybrid or gateway type system?
Yeah, it is. I would definitely consider it a hybrid system. We call it a flash optimized hybrid system. So there's 3 terabytes of cache, of DRAM cache. There's 86 terabytes of flash cache. And then there's 480 drives. Today we support the 3 terabyte drives of spinning drives. So it's a combination of the ability to be able to serve data to the application from flash to give you the performance that you're looking for. However, as data becomes stale, spin it down to or flush it down to the spinning capacity where it's still online and available and can be retrieved quickly. However, you're serving more of your reads right from the flash cache.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to go ahead and throw out the secret word of the day, cloud. So can the InfiniBox push data to the cloud?
So InfiniBox can push data to the cloud, and the way we do that is through snapshotting or our replication type of capabilities. So if you have a local InfiniBox, let's say, in your data center, and you're using it for your primary storage applications, as you want to have off-site capabilities, you can actually replicate data to an InfiniBox that is in the cloud. Now, the underlying core software that is InfiniBox, right, does not necessarily necessarily have to run on top of. We use industry standard. It's kind of a weird word to use these days. Some people like it, some don't. But commodity type hardware, but we can actually run it on top of virtual systems within the cloud and actually snap and replicate data into the cloud.
Okay, so you mentioned snapshots. So what does unlimited snapshot capability truly mean, and what is the biggest benefit of the snapshots?
So as data protection Gumbo covers quite frequently, it's really around protecting your information. It's about reliability. It's about data accessibility and availability. So unlimited snapshots means exactly that. So we have tested up to, I think it's 100,000 snapshots on a system. And again, because of what we've been able to accomplish through rewriting some of our own sets of capabilities, our snapshots are actually time-based. So we don't need to freeze the application in order to quiesce it in and slow down the application. We can take but we've had customers who have come to us and said, hey, can I make this larger? And we've said, sure, and they've gone ahead and tried that. So it's unlimited. We haven't run into any issues yet, but again, it's really all around the fact that I often joke with analyst friends of mine that, how do you back up a petabyte of storage? And you really don't, right? Mm-hmm, when it comes to operational recovery, you probably want the volumes or the file systems that you use most regularly snapped and be able to recover instantaneously. And so what we've tried to do is provide in the box the ability to have unbelievably fast data access in the event that something happens. And I think that's really important to, the protection, reliability, and availability of the system.
Okay, great. So you mentioned, all of those very important things that, customers and corporations, businesses are all seeking. Availability, performance, they basically need those things. And that's at the top of all of the solutions that are, in the industry space. So do you feel that innovation in the storage and backup and recovery industry has been, too slow or taken too long to get us where we are today?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and probably one of the reasons why I really like listening to your show, as well as other podcasts or blogs that talk about data protection and the innovation within this space. So I've been in the data protection space for 15 of my 20 years in storage, covering all the different backup products, evolving from, traditional backup software like Veritas to an Avamar, which, in its day was innovative, the data, the deduplication at the source versus at the target, like a data domain. Right. We've heard, all of us have heard way too often that tape is dead, and we know it's not. I ran IBM's tape business, and I look at the amount of money they sunk into that business, and sunk not being a bad word, but they invest in that business to do things like, hundreds of terabytes on a cartridge. I think those innovations are very, very, very interesting. I think what becomes difficult in the second tier, i.e. not your primary data, but your backup space, is the ability for folks to, implement those things, right? To replace your backup software is not a matter of just going, I'm just going to install the next new greatest thing and I'm done. We have too many requirements on the reason why we're back things up, especially from a compliance standpoint, or if you're in a regulated type of business, and more things have some sorts of regulations these days, or even corporate compliance, where I need to be able to get at that information. And that next generation or that next evolution doesn't allow the seamless capabilities to be able to go back and grab it if you've used a different technology to put it there. So I watch the change and the evolution in the data protection business as a slow-moving type of evolution. But that said, there are a lot of new sets of capabilities that come on the market that end up being taken advantage of or leveraged in small areas of the business, like a new area of business or a new application or a new project, whereby the new technology works really well, they like it, and then slowly over time, they back that into other areas where they see value as they're coming off, or moving, let's say, that old compliant, sets of data forward, and they can actually have access to it with the new technology and new capability. And quite frankly, I think the newest thing I think we have, and I mean, you've been doing this longer than I have. The newest thing I see is this notion of taking advantage of snapshots for all of your operational recovery, is the ability to mount and clone and use it very quickly. And I think in virtualized worlds, which we're getting closer and closer to 100%, even though we're not quite yet, we see the ability to clone snapshots, use them, and start working right away. Not just for operational recovery, but for newer things like test and dev and analytics and reporting and that sort of thing. And I'd be curious, your thoughts if you're seeing a lot of the same types of things.
I have been, in data protection and backup and recovery for quite some time now, and I remember, first starting out, working for IBM, and I was a part of the Tivoli Storage Manager support team, fielding phone calls from, more experienced TSM administrators because their systems were down and they needed to, recover the TSM server in order to be able to, make the nightly backup window. So they could start taking backups of all of their other thousands of systems in their environment. And, tape was, like the primary medium. So things have definitely, evolved, and, we have big data out there. We have the Internet of Things. We're actually backing up genomics, genome data, DNA information, and, how spectacular is it to, be able to sequence a genome, and then you take that information, that, 2 or 3 petabytes of, a person's genome, and then protect that information. So it's getting really interesting now to be into data protection and backup and recovery, because, we touch, every piece of information now that makes the digital universe kind of thrive, right? So, that leads me into my next question. So where do you see storage going, in the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, I definitely see a trend, and I think, it's probably, for me to say, right, I definitely see an area where storage density and storage capacity and costs have to get closer together, right? Because you mentioned a very, very important, segment as one example, right? Genomics research. So the cost to sequence a human genome at the turn of the decade was $100,000, right? And today we're at $5,000. And we've actually had conversations with computational biologists in their lab that say the most difficult thing that they have to deal with in their lab today has nothing to do with biology. It's storing the data and the ability to be able to recover and process and have access to that information. And so it's I call it the competitive business process, right? So if you're in genomics, it's not the biologists or the scientists or whatever. It's the IT is holding the scientific mission back, and it's holding back the mission of each one of these companies that is trying to be more and more competitive. And it's, a big part of the overall costs of being able to run these operations today has to do with storage, because it's your data, right? The application is X big, and it tries to process more and more information. Well, that information just continues to grow. So storage is growing and growing and growing. So, I definitely see the ability to store more capacity in a much smaller footprint being very important. However, the key is sacrifice, right? What does one have to sacrifice to be able to accomplish that? And part of our mission at Infinidat is no sacrifice, no compromise, right? I still need the performance, I still need the reliability, and I still need the scale in order to be able to deal with this.
So how important is lowering your CapEx and OpEx, or capital expenditures and operational expenditures, to you and your customers? And also, how does the InfiniBox embody that statement?
That's a really interesting question because I think that conversation is a conversation we've been having a lot with customers lately, not just when you talk CapEx and OpEx, it's usually the financial, so not just the CFO or the director of IT or the VP of IT that has a mission to both ensure they're delivering flexible technology but also control costs. You're also talking to the line of business manager. And I think today we've migrated in such a space where the line of business and IT are getting closer and closer, and they're all looking at the ability to control cost. So when I talk about this competitive business process and what I want to pay for the intelligence to be able to drive big data environments. So, for example, if I'm in the banking industry, what is it going to take me to be able to apply knowledge to a data set that helps my business be more competitive or breaks me out into new markets? And so we say, okay, you want to hire a data scientist. Well, what's that going to cost? Well, what does that come at the cost of? And it comes at the cost of what I need to have in place to be able to perform those operations, i.e. the data, right? And again, the storage. So we constantly look at not just, we constantly look at the overall cost of the system just to be able to deploy the hardware in and of itself. But then, in addition, and the history of Infinidat coming from Moshe to XIV with the new interfaces, the ability to manage things very simply, more and more petabytes per FTE, right, is very, very important to us because you don't as storage continues to grow, you can't afford to grow the people that manage it, right? It has to be right. It has to be controllable, and all of those things play a big part in how we deliver the InfiniBox.
Okay, all great, fantastic answers. So we are almost at the end of our segment, but let's move on to a new piece that I started in my previous episode, and I call this the Data Protection Gumbo Secret Ingredient Question. Okay?
Alrighty.
You got to get ready for this question.
All right.
So what is that one ingredient that you feel will spice up the gumbo of technology centered on innovation in the data protection, backup, and recovery market this year and into the future? So
that's a really good question, right? And I think that if we want to have a look at it and kind of go back to the question you talked a little bit about before, around some of the innovations around backup and that sort of thing, and how we move those things forward. I am a big proponent of the capabilities and technology capabilities around the market segment that IDC kind of carved out, talking about copy data and the ability to catalog your information. Again, a big metadata quote-unquote problem or question to solve, but a big metadata issue. But if I can catalog that information, and I have the ability to find it, and I can do things like snapshot it and not continuously create, my daily backups with my daily incrementals, my weekly fulls, and propagate data, but save that capacity for space-efficient snapshotting capabilities with a catalog to be able to find things, and then the ability to be able to repurpose those things and bring them up automatically and use them for different business purposes. Right. I think that's really, really cool type of technology. And I think foundationally, the snapshotting and the cloning we have in our InfiniBox, and I think as we continue to grow, it's the ability to automate those processes. Things like doing like a chef or a puppet for storage becomes increasingly more and more important. And I believe over the course of this year, we'll start to see some of that.
Awesome, and fantastic. So I really appreciate your time here today, Steve, and thank you for appearing on Data Protection Gumbo, and I look forward to more conversations with you in the future.
Well, thanks, Demetrius, and again, big proponent of the show, and keep going, because I want to keep listening.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank you for listening.
I welcome your feedback on iTunes and ask that you provide a rating and share with your peers. Please follow me on Twitter at dmalbro and connect with me on LinkedIn. Together, we will be able to add to the innovation of storing data more efficiently and smarter. Have a great week.